What is going on? Germain Craddock here, and I'm wrapping up my first week of dedicated board studying. And let me tell you, UWorld has a really special way of just taking your confidence and just shattering it, producing numerous tiers and then asking for more. It's just kind of hungry that way. And while I wouldn't wish step studying in UWorld on my own mortal enemy, nor do I have my own mortal enemy, still working on that. Ideally, what I want to do is help make this whole process as transparent as possible, and kind of my experience going through it, because I have about 3 or so odd weeks left of dedicated board studying, and then what I've been doing to help prepare for boards prior to dedicated, what I've been doing during dedicated, and what I'm going to do for the next 3 or so odd weeks. And so hopefully this can help you kind of figure out what the non-negotiables are, like UWorld and doing practice problems, and then ideally some other resources that you may utilize moving forward with your dedicated board studying. And then at the same time, also help you hit the ground running. So when you do actually get to dedicated, you're not trying to figure out what's going to work for you because you know what it is. You've done enough, prior to dedicated that you've kind of got a feel for what your gaps are and what you need to focus on during dedicated. And ideally, you can hit the ground running. And on that note, I need a break from studying. So, going to the gym.
Dive right in, let's go. Move forward and dip in your toes. Let the rhythm take control. It's going down tonight, yeah. Dive right in, let's go. Move forward and dip in your toes. Let the rhythm take control. It's going down tonight, yeah.
I'm about to start what will be my 4th practice assessment for Step and COMLEX. And our first one we did was at the end of the first semester of second year. We did another one in the middle of it. I did my own NBME and then now COMSAE. COMSAE doesn't have a great correlation to STEP scores, and I'm not exactly happy about that. But it's required, and I won't digress on that. But kind of what I want to do is show you where I am in my standings about 20 days out. So I'm 20 days out from STEP, and I have, I guess 24 days for COMLEX, I think. I don't know. I'd have to do the math. But I want to show you my metrics, where I'm standing, kind of how to navigate the metrics on UWorld, AMBOSS, the difference between the two, and, let's just get into it. So this is kind of what my screen looks like when I'm actually doing my step studying and UWorld. Like I said, UWorld is a breaker of confidence, a breaker of spirits. My performance is 47% correct. I've only used 35% of it, so I've done about 1,300 questions. You can see other things like correct, incorrect, things like that. My percentile rank, which again doesn't feel great. And that's just the reality of it. You also see reports, so you can see kind of, where your metrics are and where you need to kind of focus your studying. So like, I'm not great at immunology and biochemistry, and I know that. I could tell you that. I don't even need to see that to tell you that. But regardless, like you can see graphing. And so like in this gap here, this is when I started UWorld, and it didn't really feel great. So I decided to go more block studying. So I really hit AMBOSS heavy. And you can see here, that's where that gap falls. And then I've been just hitting UWorld heavy since then. And I'm not a huge fan of this UI and how it looks and just all of that. And I'll show you what I did in this spreadsheet in a second. But like I said, I really did hit AMBOSS heavy in that gap. And so I've done about 1,000 questions of USMLE Step 1 for AMBOSS. And right now, just going back to the dashboard, I'm at 31% complete, and I won't touch AMBOSS anymore. In hindsight, I probably should have done more at the beginning and while I was doing second pass during actual didactics, but it is what it is. So here, 63%, which feels great. 71st percentile also feels great. And again, just like with UWorld, you can see kind of where your discipline system. So here I can see, metabolism. That's where I'm not great. Again, everything biochemistry, immunology, not my fan, and I'm not a fan of it either. And you can see generating either question banks, articles, things like that for these gaps that you have, so you can really kind of hone them in and improve on them. And I do like this UI a lot better than the UWorld UI. But as far as questions go, so the UWorld questions are far in between either multidisciplinary, second and third order, and just very complex. So the quality of question that you get in like an NBME practice assessment is leagues below difficulty of UWorld, and so that feels great as far as NBME goes. And same thing with other practice assessments I've done so far. They don't feel nearly as hard as UWorld, but again, because you're doing harder questions with UWorld, you're likely gonna be more prepared with the easier questions. Just don't get tripped up. Now with AMBOSS, I would say has a bigger range. So AMBOSS has easier questions. So they use hammers, but I'm just gonna say stars because it feels weird to say 5 hammers. So like their 5-star questions I think are harder than the UWorld questions. So like those are like PhD level questions, and AMBOSS really does a good job of staying in its lane. So all of their questions that you do for a discipline stay in their lane. So anything you do for cardio, for GI, it just stays cardio and GI. Now, those question ranges, I think they do have easier questions. So their 1 and 2-star questions are easier, whereas UWorld stays in like the 3-star range, sometimes 4, every now and then a 2, but UWorld and far and few between, you have easy questions. So a lot of them are just harder. They're second order, even the third order. So like they give you a disease presentation. Not only do you have to know the disease, but then you have to be able to recall, some treatment or antibiotic therapy. And then what is the mechanism of action of that therapy? And so that's what I mean by like third order questions. So like they're really difficult and you really have to know a lot of things to get to the answer for a UWorld question. Whereas AMBOSS, not necessarily the case, especially with their like 2, sometimes 3-star questions. So, real quick, I want to show you what the spreadsheet I made. So I made a spreadsheet because I wasn't really happy with how UWorld does charting and graphing. And I will share this with you, but real quick, kind of going over it, you can see just kind of me tracking all of my questions. And then I also have a spot here for UWorld incorrects. And I do this to unlock on my OnKing deck, the UWorld questions that I do. And I do really like this way of going about it because I can keep track of everything in one place. And then as I've been tracking and charting, you can see I've done 1,300 questions. My average is 47.3. I've done 1,310 questions. But here I did it so that way it can chart and track and give me metrics on everything that I'm doing. So here, 20 days out, my goal is to hit 79 questions a day to hit the 65% complete. And I will share this and kind of explain how it goes into a bit more detail. But here I can see a trend line of my questions and my answers, and see that how I've been progressing and, see that I've been growing as I've been going through dedicated, which is nice. You don't really see that on the AMBOSS UI. And then here I have range averages, so the average for the question range, and then also my predicted average given the charting, and then also my actual average given, the 1,300 questions I've done at the beginning. Obviously my average was lower, so it brings my average down. But here you can see that the ranges in general are going up. So with that, I'm going to get to COMSAE, and start my 4th practice assessment. See you in a sec. So 410. Well, could be better, could be worse. Let's see. I'm in the lower segment of the average performance, but I think that's passing. So 3 weeks out and I am technically passing. I will take that. Let's see. Thoughts. Well, I take back what I said. I am glad that I did this. Not happy that it took so long. While I would have preferred to have done an NBME practice this weekend. This did kind of help me figure out what kind of questions they'll be asking for a COMLEX style exam. So a lot more on the anatomy side of things, a lot more OMM, obviously, which I'll have that, 3 or 4 day gap to focus on OMM after I take step 1 and just kind of refresh all of those things that I don't remember anymore. As far as kind of like questions, I would say it's pretty similar to like NBME, first, second order questions, but everything stays in its lane. And then the majority of them are second order questions. So, recognize the disease and have a pathophysiology answer based on that, or, mechanism of action for a drug. And unlike UWorld, it stays in its lane. So I will take that, because multidisciplinary questions in UWorld, those will be the bane of my existence for the next 3.5 weeks. All right. Back to UWorld. We are now at 16 days out. I'm currently sitting at 1,540 UWorld questions, and I'm roughly increasing my percent per day average by about 0.5%, which isn't bad, and it's slowly increasing, but honestly just got to keep cranking it out. And today I just kind of want to show you what honestly a regular studying day looks like for me, and kind of how I break up my day with going to the gym, studying, doing content review, and then also doing my UWorld practice questions. The grind continues.
Do you just feel like there is no just left to see? Do you?
It is time to go to the gym and take a well-deserved break.
I wonder what it meant to be if I let go, so let it flow. I think there's more in me.
I just need a break. I'll take what you take. I just need to break.
Just like that, back to the grind. That's enough studying for today. NBME 30 is done, and I'm currently sitting at an 83% chance of passing with the 61 I just scored, which is much better than the 52 I got on the last exam with a 34% chance of passing about 2 or so odd weeks ago. And it really feels like I'm making consistent progress and headway to improving my marks and my notes on all the practice assessments and tests that I'm doing, and the UWorld assessments that I'm doing as well. But it definitely feels like there's still progress to be had and progress to be made, and thankfully I have about 2 or so odd weeks left to go. Unfortunately, I have to go back to San Antonio this weekend. My brother is getting married, which is great. It's great. It's great. But that also means I'm not going to be studying this weekend, which is fine. It's totally fine. I'll convince myself that it's fine eventually. I also need to write a speech. I haven't started that. Well, there's no time like the car ride to do that. And in the meantime, I need to pack. I guess I'll start doing that. Unfortunately, before even being able to hit the highway, we had to stop at a gas station so I could fill out some surveys on my phone for third-year rotation site preferences. And better yet, some of the surveys had, quote, technical difficulties. Strong emphasis on some air quotes. I have to literally do one per each rotation, a different survey. Obstetrics, let's try that one. The problem is that it's first come, first serve. So if you don't do it, you may not get the site you want. Staphylococcus aureus, yeah. Normally colonized?
Yeah.
The nose. Nares.
Which type of hypersensitivity mediates anaphylaxis, food, drug, or bee sting allergies?
Type 1. Wait, what was it?
I don't know, I just put it back.
I need to know what it was.
We'll go back.
Okay, what'd you say it again? Flavivirus.
Flaccid paralysis.
Flaccid paralysis, West Nile virus.
Wrong. It's South Nile virus.
It's okay, Cheryl, we're almost there. Road trip over, and the next day was my brother and sister-in-law's beautiful wedding, reception, and a kick-ass band, Germain Craddock music, that I only wish I could have not had the weight of boards looming over so I could have properly enjoyed it. But such is life in this season of boards. A short 48 hours later, and we were back in Fort Worth and back on the grind. Okay, Shiro, watch out. Oh, finally. We're home.
I know. Hi. What do you want, Stinky? I know I've been gone all day. What do you want? You want to say hello? You want to be a menace and run around? Yeah, you do. Say it. Say it with your chest.
My COMLEX experience was basically a 10-hour ordeal. I woke up at 6 this morning, left around 6:20, got to the exam site in Dallas, which was an hour away, at 7:20, and then started the whole check-in process around a little before 7:30. And that took, 45 minutes or so because they have to check everyone in individually. You had to put your stuff in, do your palm scan. They have to check your pockets, check your hair. I should have worn less pockets in hindsight. Now I know that moving forward. My hair being in like a half bun was a problem because they have to see behind your ears for some reason, so you can't have anything behind your ears. And I also had a bit of a problem getting started with my exam. So like there's a tutorial period. During the tutorial period, my exam headphones weren't working. So for COMLEX, you have videos that you have to watch and listen to the diagnoses, the special tests that they're doing, and you have to hear what the physician or patient's saying so you can kind of actually do that for part of your question stem. My headphones weren't working. They had to pause my tutorial. They had to figure out what was going wrong with it. They had to sign out of the exam software, sign back in. It was another 15-minute ordeal. And then finally that was over and I could start my exam. So the way COMLEX is set up is you have two sections, the morning section and the afternoon section, or the first and second section, depending, I guess, if they have afternoon test, I'm not sure. But the first section is 4 hours. Then you have the second section, which is another 4 hours. In that time, you have 8 sections of 44 questions. And then you have scheduled breaks in between your second and third, fourth and fifth, and sixth and seventh sections. So every other section you have a break. And you have an allotted 1 hour time period to take that break. So you could break it into 15, 30, 15,
15, 15, 15. Honestly, it's whatever you want. You just have that time. But during that time is the only time you can, get up, go to the restroom, text some friends, go on break, sit outside in the hallway, go to the restroom, go to the restroom again, drink some water. And obviously you just have to really make sure you're timing your restroom breaks, timing when you need to go to the restroom and how hydrated you are. So that way you can do your 88 question spiels and spells all at one go without being disrupted and ideally, hopefully not needing to rush to the restroom. And so that whole process, you have an allotted 570 minutes. So I started my exam around 8:15 and then I didn't finish until 5:30. So it was basically a whole day, a full day of taking that exam. And by the end of it, my body felt fried, my brain felt fried, I was exhausted. And I'm still exhausted, but it's over, thankfully. And hopefully, fingers crossed, I don't have to do it again. But realistically, everybody that I've talked to, the Reddit posts that I've read, no one leaves COMLEX feeling great, but inherently it is a standardized exam with a bell-shaped curve. And so the goal for you, ideally, when you're taking COMLEX is to be better than the 8th percentile. And so that's basically guaranteed pass for COMLEX. And so, you're doing your COMSAEs, you're doing COMBANKs, all of those things and testing materials. So you can hopefully ensure that you're doing well. And when push comes to shove during the actual test exam, and actual level 1 COMLEX, you're doing well enough that you can pass. But even though I did a full day exam, so I did the free 120 for NBME and then I did the COMBANK right after, which is 300 question, it still didn't feel quite the same. And even though that was also a very brutal day and that was very exhausting, still not quite the real thing. And I would definitely recommend trying to at least fit one full-length day of like 300 questions, like either do an NBME, do a COMBANK, and then 2 UWorld blocks or something of that sort to really prepare yourself for that endurance, because the mental endurance and physical endurance to do that is brutal. And it is not something that you really feel doing when you're doing 80 question blocks with review, with some breaks, chit chatting on your phone, checking TikTok, and your content review as well. But it's different. Inherently, how you prepare for the exam is really going to determine how you do on the exam. And for me, for COMLEX, taking a month to prepare for it definitely feels like it was enough. I brought my COMSAE score up by over 100 points in about 3 weeks. So I brought it up from a 410 to a 528. From the 15th of May I took it on the 5th of June. So 15th of May to the 5th of June. So about 3 weeks. And that was enough time for me to bring it up over 100 points. And, most of that, I've only done 2 COMBANKs in that time period. So I did a COMBANK in that period, a COMBANK, which was like one of their practice exams, and then 1 COMSAE in that time period. And so that's the only COMLEX specific review that I've done. And then everything else has been the Dirty Medicine. Oh, Dirty Medicine. That guy, amazing. For the OMM playlist that he has, 100% you have to do that. There's also the Dorian deck. There's also, I think, a PDF version that is the equivalent of the Dorian deck. That is very, very useful for the MSK and just general OMM anatomy that is required of you for COMLEX, because COMLEX it's anatomy heavy, but like anatomy pathophys heavy. So, knowing your nerve root levels, knowing your deficits for brachial plexus, knowing stuff of that nature. I would say this exam was a bit more heme heavy than I was anticipating, a bit more repro heavy than I was anticipating. And naturally the micro was heavy, but like even with all of the sketchy that I've done and all of the sketchy micro that I've done and all the review that I've done, the way they asked some of those questions, I just feel like even if I had done 5 more passes of those Anki decks, I still would have gotten them wrong. And that's kind of the general theme that I've gotten throughout my COMLEX experience, is that you could prepare exceptionally well for the exam, but somehow they ask a question in a way that just doesn't click, or by the time you finish 300 questions, you just don't have the mental capacity to go through those mental gymnastics to answer those questions. And realistically, there's times, especially before I finished my fourth block and before I finished my last block, that my brain was just done, just straight up done. And I had to just take deep breaths, continue, just, you're almost there, just convince myself it's okay, and just do my best. And honestly, I think every single section I was flagging 20 questions. And not because I just didn't know it outright, but because I just wasn't super confident, and because you can go back and read a question and be like, oh wow, I missed this one part. I remember there's one question they were doing some OMM diagnoses, and I didn't have my headphones on for the first part of it, and I missed the first part of the video. I diagnosed based on the second part of the video, and because I missed the first part, I missed the question because I didn't hear the first part. And then there's just random little things that you just may not have listened to, may not have paid attention to, may not have read, because again, you're doing 352 questions, and there's just only so much you can do to just be able to collect all of those points of the exam, all the points in the question stem, and be able to answer question thoughtfully. And so that comes with endurance, that comes with time, and that comes with practice. So 100%, as I said earlier, you cannot not practice question banks and not do question banks. That is a non-negotiable. You need to do question banks and practice the formatting, the timing, getting used to not being able to see your answers, switching for me from the tutored mode to non-tutored mode and non-tutored mode and timed, just so you can get used to just building that timing, that endurance, and just hoping for the best. At this point, I have 4 weeks before I find out if I passed. Fingers crossed on that front. And thankfully, it is a standardized deviation, so standard curve, bell-shaped curve. And I hope to be on this side. Yeah, that's for you. And don't have to see it again for a year till I take COMLEX Level 2. And then that will be that. All right, so I got to pack, go to San Antonio, get married. Looking forward to that. Looking forward to taking a break, albeit a short one. And then finally being done with board season and moving on to rotations. I need a nap. With COMLEX Level 1 completed on Wednesday, we packed up yet again to go down to San Antonio. That Friday, Ala and I celebrated our civil union with our immediate families. And on Saturday, we had a slightly larger family get-together to mark the occasion, followed by a short 2-day staycation at Hotel Emma in downtown San Antonio, which is an absolutely charming and unique hotel. And woefully, it was only 2 days because I had to take my rescheduled step on Saturday the 17th. So, from Tuesday till Friday, it was back to full day grinds at the in-laws to prepare for step 1. Step is finally over. I took it yesterday, and step is, it's what you expect. So if you do UWorld, the NBMEs, the free 120s, it kind of falls in the middle part of all of those. The stem length is kind of more like UWorld, but not as far as difficulty goes. The NBMEs, I would say, on the easier side as far as question length and stem goes, but it's good for pacing yourself. And the free 120s, especially the second one, the newer one, the question stem length was pretty equal, but as far as the difficulty of the questions go, I would say step was harder than the free 120s. And so, in my opinion, honestly, I think if you work on, building up your endurance, if you work on doing a lot of questions through UWorld, the NBMEs, the free 120s, and just get in there with doing a lot of questions, you should be fine. It was hard, and fingers crossed,
COMLEX and Step is over, and I never have to look at those again until level 2 and Step 2. But I'm just ready to sleep and not have this weight on my shoulders. So I'll talk a little bit more about kind of the content and kind of what I would do, in hindsight when I get back to Fort Worth, and when we're finally back home before orientation, because now basically I have orientation, like a week gap, and then we start rotations, and then hopefully I will get my results hopefully during my first week of rotations, and just finally, get that confirmation, because that's where it is. It's just a weird limbo spot where I feel confident in my ability and what I was able to do, but at the same time, you just go into those and you never know until you're done. And now I'm done and I have a 3-week waiting period. So that's great. It's great for your confidence, great for your psyche. Love that. So now I'm gonna go to the gym and work out. I haven't done that in a few weeks.